Today's episode of Formidable Opponents is brought to you by HelloFresh. Do you feel like you're stuck in a dinner rut? With HelloFresh, you get fresh, pre-measured ingredients with mouth-watering seasonal recipes delivered right to your door. Skip all those trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. You can now enjoy cooking and get dinner on the table in 30 minutes or less. With over 25 recipes to choose from each week, there is something for everyone to enjoy. All recipes are designed and tested by professional chefs and nutritional experts to ensure deliciousness and simplicity. You know, I had the opportunity to make their Hall of Fame firecracker meatballs with the roasted green beans and jasmine rice. So good. I'm not much of a chef, but I made this for the family, and it was a simple and delicious hit. Yeah, my kids were shocked I made something spectacular outside of peanut butter sandwiches. Go to the link in our show notes and get $80 off, including free shipping on HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit. Today's episode is also brought to you by DB. DB is a Scandinavian brand that makes backpacks and bags to help people on the move stay ready for anything. From the streets to the peaks, DB's gear is travel tested by some of the world's best athletes, adventurers, and creators. Over the past decade, DB has designed and developed, released, and refined the best bags in the market. With DB's patented hookup system, you are able to attach smaller products to your backpack, roller, or tote. You know, their backpacks and bags are not only durable, they are also beautiful. No matter if you're going on a short road trip to visit friends and family or flying to an exotic destination, DB's gear will raise some eyebrows. They are a great conversation piece. Trust me, people judge you on your luggage. Invest in a product that looks spectacular, is reliable, and affordable. We are teaming up with DB to exclusively offer our listeners 10% off your next purchase by using the code POD10 or going to the link in our show notes. DB, it's time to move on, time to get going. And now on to our show.
Well, then send me to my room, mama.
There's no hope with dope.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to episode 26 of Formidable Opponents, a show that pits three people who have known each other virtually their entire lives in a series of conversations as we argue what is the best in a variety of fun, engaging, and critical pop culture topics we all debate about. I'm Randall, and with me, as always, is Bob and Joseph. And today's topic is Best Saved by the Bell episode. We're talking about a show that's near and dear to us, Gen Xers and Millennials, who have a special affinity to Saved by the Bell. With its bubblegum zaniness and cartoon antics, this show propelled the Saturday morning teen comedy cavalcade that eviscerated Saturday morning cartoons and eventually led to their extinction. The story goes that NBC had been losing the high end of their animated audience. So the idea was to create a live action comedy to air on Saturday mornings. Hello, Screech. Fuck off, Smurfs. Kids at the time were getting serious about coming of age topics like environmental issues, the dangers of drug addiction, and in turn, television became more dignified and called to cover these topics. Just say no to drugs, especially if that piece of shit Johnny Dakota offers them to you at one of his highbrow, drug-infused Hollywood parties.
It was just a little pot.
Saved by the Bell was much more than wacky antics that took place in one hallway. You know the one I'm talking about. The one where they took driver's ed, had countless garage sales, military training, where Mrs. Belding nearly gave birth, and where Zack and Slater threw down in the original Battle of the Bastards. Through it all, Saved by the Bell was there for us. In its own absurdist way, it taught us about the meaning of friendship. It taught us about dating. It taught us about mentorship, about heartbreak. As illogical and as dated as the show is, try to watch it now without wincing. It endures. It lives on. People of a certain age clutch on to those memories of those episodes the way the show's wardrobe department uncomfortably made sure that those unitards he wore clutched onto Slater's body. Disturbing. Despite the tomfoolery and the lightheartedness, the show processed teen angst and emotionally charged themes. You may even say it was the catalyst in showcasing that the 90s teen demographic was an audience that networks had to cater to. These storylines have purpose and essentially have to be reintroduced, broadened, and refined. Critically acclaimed series like My So-Called Life, Party of Five, and even Freaks and Geeks, though short-lived, may have not have had a platform if executives hadn't realized that this demographic needed to be ministered to. Just remember, there is no Angela Chase without Kelly Kapowski. So, guys, my first question is, hey, what is going on here? Bob and Joseph, what's going on, guys?
I'm so excited.
Sorry. You got to do it a little bit better than that, bro.
Come on, Rand. You're the Mr. Building of this show.
Hey, come on.
We've been off.
Did anybody else find it disturbing that he was hanging out in Zach's bedroom, or was it just me?
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
So, guys, I want to start off by asking the both of you, what has Saved by the Bell meant to you and to your generation?
Well, I mean, obviously, for my generation, I mean, it meant a lot. It gave us Kelly Kapowski. I mean, come on. Nah, I'm sorry. That's a horrible thing. No, yes, aside from the fact that I had a huge crush on Kelly Kapowski. I thought the show was awesome. It gave us a lot of funny characters and the diversity of the characters. I think it was this cool little situation where it was a group of friends from clearly all corners of different backgrounds. You got I'm not 100% sure that Zach was he was
Native
a prep,
American.
Yes.
Oh.
Running Zach.
Zach.
He's portrayed as the preppy. Like but he's not like the top kid of the school. I mean, but anyway, he's got the quote unquote geek in Screech, the jock in Slater, the ditz in Lisa, and the girl. I mean, it was a great combination of different people from different corners, and I thought it was a great little thing for our generation to see. Just a bunch of. I mean, not everybody was represented, but hey, they did their best.
They did have Running Zach.
They did.
I thought it was great. I think you hit on a perfect point that everybody got to see that diverse group of friends that came together and had fun together and went through a bunch of different high school situations together, as we all do. It was really heavy on the stereotypes. There was a lot of funny situations. There was a lot of serious situations. I always like looking back at them now that each character learned something by the end of it, especially Zach, who was a douche throughout, the first 20 minutes of it. But by the end, he realizes that he fucked up or he messed up, and, he's got to atone for what he did, or his way of thinking. It was a great show. Like I said, great comedy. It did kind of, they were looking to cater to the teens, preteens, junior high school kids on Saturday mornings, and it was a really entertaining show, man. I watched it religiously when I was a kid. I love that show. It was always made me laugh, and I always kept my attention.
You guys brought up diversity. When you look at the history of the show, it was supposed to be an all-white cast, just like Friends. Lisa Turtle was supposed to be like this Jewish princess. Slater was supposed to be like this Italian sort of John Travolta character, and they diversified the cast. I don't think they get enough credit. Of course, Zach was Arab when he didn't want to date a girl. He was Jewish when he wanted to go skip for the Dodgers game. So Zach was like everything. He was Native American. He was, he probably could have done a lot worse. And so, I think the fact that we had this diversity on television in the late 80s and early 90s really struck a chord, because you had Mario Lopez, you had Lark Voorhees, and you had this sort of different people from different walks of life, and they all had sort of equal footing. Of course, the show was Zach's. Of course, he was the main character, but I think the show did a pretty good job. I know in its corny, zany, cartoonish way, but I think they found a pretty good balance in showcasing all the characters. What do y'all think?
I was gonna say, I agree 100%. I think they definitely showcased each character's their best qualities, even their worst qualities, but they definitely pushed each character to have at least a major storyline in an episode.
Exactly. They all had their own situations. Like you mentioned, Zach it's his show and it's supposed to be about him, but they didn't shy away from putting each of the characters through, some hard situations at times, which, I mean, we all know, and I'm sure we'll talk about, but.
Are you saying hard situations because Zach tried to sleep with every chick and check it out? You're bored. You need a place to stay. Why don't we make out in the corner?
Every time a pretty girl had a line at the beginning of the show, Zach was trying to hook up with her. So you know what the plot was going to be and how it was going to go. Now, speaking of storylines, does this show get overlooked for its storylines and diversity because it's so silly? Are we looking at it now and saying, well, we knew it was a silly show in the mornings, but I don't know about you guys. When I rewatched and I saw the episodes that we all chose, plus I saw another like half a dozen, and I was thinking, you know what? In its own way, this show was actually pretty well written for what it was. I know the writers were a little older or whatever, and so that takes up a lot of space, but the show wasn't bad. I mean, it was corny, it was dumb, but it had a nice flow to it. And does it get overlooked because it was so cheesy and corny?
I don't think so. I think it had I think you mentioned it correctly. It had some good writing. You said the writers were, I mean, they obviously weren't like high school kids and they weren't in their, they weren't teenagers, but they didn't put the kids through some questionable shit that, like you might see nowadays where you got like, some writers that are making like doing shows where kids are in high school and they're making like a girl dress a particular way when that's pretty fucked up, or a guy doing something stupid or crazy. I mean, they didn't put these characters through that, so I thought they did a good job, and I don't think any of it gets overlooked. I know the show, I mean, at its heart, it's a comedy, so it's supposed to be funny, but it was good. It was good I think, I mean, when you, like you said, when you go back and look at the episodes, which is a hard thing to do if you're watching it on Hulu because they're so out of whack. But if you go back and look at particular episodes and remember specific ones in your head, there's a lot of positive messages and cool things. And I don't think any of it's overlooked.
It's still got that like 80s kind of nostalgic. It's still kind of innocent, you know what I mean? Instead, like nowadays you watch a high school show and, you see a kid overdosing on hard drugs like heroin or something like that. And, it's real life because that shit's happening nowadays. But like, back then, it's caffeine pills. I think that one of the craziest ones that I had seen, or like they was drunk driving. They drank and then they drove, which is probably their most serious issue then, other than Johnny Dakota smoking a doobie when he was trying to hit on Kelly. How old was he? I don't know, but it still felt kind of not right. But there is still an innocence to it. The little good little morals of the story at the end of each episode. It was silly. It was very funny. It shouldn't be overlooked because that was our generation's coming of age little TV show.
Excellent. Let me ask you guys this, because I saw a couple episodes with my son. My son was loving it. He was laughing, especially, of course, with Screech, and he had a lot of physical comedy. And then about 10 minutes into the episode, there was a fat shaming joke. There was a misogynistic joke, a sexist joke. And then there was, hints of things that were sort of deemed inappropriate. Do you think this show has aged like really bad? Is it something that now, if this generation watched it, they were like, how the hell did they get away with that in the early 90s?
I think you could say that about a lot of the comedies and movies and TV shows in the different decades. In the 70s, you could say certain things. In the 80s, you couldn't. In the 80s, you could do and say certain things. In the 90s, you couldn't. And on and on and on. I think that, again, we've talked about it. If your heart's in the right place and it's meant to be silly and it's meant to be taken as a joke, then it should be things. I think those episodes, like you mentioned, the fat shaming one, I think it was supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. It was supposed to make you think, and it was supposed to make teens that are watching it believe, like, that's not fucking cool. That's not fucking right. You shouldn't be saying certain things to certain people based on how they look, their social status, whatever the case is. So I think the message was there, maybe the way they delivered it nowadays maybe not carry over so well, but in the 90s, I thought, that was kind of I don't want to say the thing then, but that was kind of the way they delivered the comedy or talking serious points.
I agree with Bob on that point, that like, look, you're going to go back and look at a lot of shows nowadays because of, the climate that we live in. You'll go back and look at shows from every decade and ask yourself, well, man, was that right, or is that questionable? With this show, there are situations that we might talk about or might not, just because hey, we didn't pick that episode, but you can point to a few things about this show and ask yourself, was that right, or is that questionable? Sure, but I don't think in a lot of these situations, especially with this show, none of this had any ill intentions for any of these situations. I mean, as far as I know, I know there's there's stuff that yes, we're gonna talk about. Maybe like the Johnny Dakota asshole. You know, I mean, because how old was Kelly? Kelly was in high school.
Well, Jesus, you gotta mention Jeff. Jeff
as
like,
well.
Jeff's in college.
He's in college and
16-year-old girl.
Yeah, 16, 17-year-old girl. So thankfully, we didn't see any like ill will, I guess, in these episodes. I mean, she was dating a college guy, but we didn't hear of anything else. And there are some other situations, like I said, but I don't think any of these episodes were written with any kind of bad intentions. And yeah, you probably can't do them now, but you know what? That's what you're gonna say about everything, you know?
Yeah, what's fucked up? You're like, a lot of people say, "Oh, you can't do that now," but look at there's a lot of fucked up shit on the teen shows nowadays. You know what I mean?
There is. Good point.
I mean, we have a damn show about teen pregnancy on MTV. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of fucked up shows that touch on a lot of different fucked up situations. So, who's to say in comparing the topics that talked about in the '90s and Saved by the Bell and comparing some now? I don't know if you say like, "Oh, you can't do that now, but you can do this." And the storylines are pretty crazy nowadays too.
I have two more questions. I have a few questions here, but I'm going to save some for the end. Is this the best all-time kids comedy series? Do you guys see it? Because this spawned a lot of knockoffs. California Dreams, Hang Time, City Guys, all these this eviscerated, as I mentioned in the intro, Saturday morning cartoons. After the popularity of Saved by the Bell, they found the formula. They said, you know what, teens are going to watch Saturday morning cartoons, or they're going to watch Saturday morning programming, I should say. And we need something for those kids that grew out of like the Smurfs and you know, all these other things they were showing.
Hey, fuck you. The Smurfs are awesome.
We need something for those like 10 to 13-year-olds. That's a key demographic. And then so they spawned all these knockoff shows. What are your thoughts, I should say, about some of these knockoff shows and how they compared to Saved by the Bell?
Well, before I get into the knockoff shows, I think it really did spawn that new age of like, you know, that teen comedy for kids. TGIF came out,
yes.
Right?
Yeah,
right afterwards too. So it kind of like pushed that on Fridays. So you had a lot of shows, that were kind of more towards the preteen, the young teen, you know, high school kids, junior high kids, that kind of thing. The California Dream Show is a good knockoff. I'm not gonna lie, we watched that when I was younger. It was basically Tori was Jake, right? Same dude in a fucking leather jacket. Why are you wearing a leather jacket in California when it's over 100 fucking degrees every day is beyond me. I'm sure that guy smelled like ass, but the show was good. I'm trying to think of like 90210, but that was more like serious. And they got, you know, it was still high school. It was a little more serious, had a more serious tone.
And they were closer to Mr. Belding's age than they were to Zach's age. They were still in high school though. What about you, Joseph? All-time best teen series?
I believe so. Like Bob mentioned, and if you want to talk about, I know you mentioned earlier about the show and did storylines get overlooked because of its silliness. I think as much as we did like California Dreams, the character of Sly on California Dreams, now that was just silly. Like that show had a little more over the top silliness and dumbness than Saved by the Bell ever had. And I'm trying to think of like any real episode of California Dreams where they maybe touched on some serious stuff. I can't remember off the top of my head.
The
blind girl.
Okay.
Then also the Jake's uncle dies of cancer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, so there was a few, but I think we saw better quality writing from Saved by the Bell than we did like California Dreams and other things like came out afterwards.
Here's the biggest question. If there was a battle of the bands, who was winning, Zack Attack or the fucking California Dreams?
The California Dreams.
California Dreams.
Who really sang those songs? Jake was fucking jamming out in the guitar right at Eddie Van Halen solos and everything.
Jake was a good guitarist, man. I can't front on it. He looked like he was really like a rock star compared to all the other people who were just.
That's true, but he also looked like he was 30 years old.
That's true. And my last question is, who plays a more convincing Vietnam vet, Mr. Belding or Tom Cruise on Born or the 4th of July? did Mr. Belding scream Vietnam vet to you? Because he's mentioned it on the first few episodes. And you're like, how is this? I don't know. I mean, who am I?
To be honest with you, if they didn't mention it, I wouldn't have known. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not something that they touched on for some,
would you really fuck with a vet like that? I mean,
well, first off, he's a big motherfucker. I mean, he's like, he towers over all the other characters in the show. He just uses that. He's just a goofy guy.
And that storyline could have been so more robust, but they decided not to do anything. So guys, before we go on to our selections, let's talk about some honorable mentions. What are some of your favorite Saved by the Bell episodes that didn't make the cut, but are your favorites to watch?
The mystery episode was always good. I don't know how they ended up in the mystery mansion episode. I always thought that one was really funny. The subliminal messages one with the hearts for Valentine's Day, where Zach put subliminal messages in a cassette tape for the girls to fall in love with him. I like the fight. That one was good. Although for two dudes that have been in love with Kelly Kapowski arguing over Kelly Kapowski for the entirety of the show, they're fighting over some new secondary girl that shows up for one fucking episode. I thought that was kind of funny, but we did get to see Mr. Belding in a wig, so it was a pretty hilarious episode. And finally, Screech's spaghetti sauce episode, where like they make spaghetti sauce and they're trying to sell it, and at the end they find out that it's like a Prego recipe or some shit. I thought that was pretty funny.
I had fake IDs. That was another good episode that I liked because I thought it was pretty funny. And
what was Screech's name in that one? Mark, Donnie.
The
rocker chick falls in love with him at the club.
Yeah, that was a hilarious episode. 1 and 2, you end up like, because if you're a fan of the show, and like we were rooting for Zach, and you finally see that obviously Jeff is a dirtbag in that episode. But there's some fake IDs. Yeah, the attic, great place.
Why was he wearing Carlton sweater in that episode? That's all.
I have no idea. So I had fake IDs. I had 1-900 Crush. I believe that was the one where they had like the call-in number, and I believe they gave out advice. Palm Springs Weekend was cool because it was 2 episodes. So I always thought, because like sometimes some of these shows you just want to see them continue a little bit more. So you got 2 episodes out of that one. That was always real nice. And I had one that's going to be one of your all, so I'm not going to mention. I'll just leave it at that.
My honorable mentions, I don't remember the episode titles, but I could go by plot. The Hot Fudge Sunday one where they were a band. I'm so excited. The caffeine pill episode. And
it's called Jesse's song.
Jesse's song, and it's not because Jesse's
Brian's song.
It's not because of the whole Jesse subplot. But one of my favorite all-time scenes is that the girls don't want to do the band thing, and Screech comes dressed.
Sinead O'Connor. Yeah.
Again, one of those things that you can't do.
Like, dude, you can't be hanging out in the girls' locker room, which he did a couple of times. He dressed in drag and went to the girls' locker room.
That's right up there with Zach dressing as Bambi. Do you remember?
Yeah. The guy hits on him as soon as he walks in. He's like, "Get away from me, bro."
And Jesse as Maria Tortilla. It's something else he can't do nowadays. I mean, this whole series is so outdated. I also like the Christmas episode where, Zach falls in love with a homeless girl. And they call them homeless. They don't ever say their names. It's like, there's a homeless guy. And, he had a daughter that Zach sort of was dating. I thought that was a good episode. We don't know what the hell happened to her after that.
We do know the dad was getting it on with Zach's mom.
She was married.
He was out of town for 3 weeks, so I don't know what's going on, man.
Best 3 weeks of her life.
I'll try to ring you guys in. Also, I enjoyed the episode where they were at the Malibu Sands. I thought those episodes were pretty good.
Yes, that's
those
true.
Were fun.
Mr. Carosi, those are great episodes.
I think it was like 4 episodes that took, I don't know, 4 or 5 or something like that. They talk about it. They take place over that whole Malibu Sands summer, which they were good episodes.
Yeah, they were really good. I like that. It was a little
fell in love with Stacey Carosi there.
Oh yeah, she was great. And then lastly, I'll say Jesse's stepbrother Eric, who came in and was just like wreaking havoc, and he was like
dirtbag.
Yeah, he's a dirtbag, and he's from New York, and that was a good episode too. Enjoyed all those episodes. Let's go ahead and go to our selections. I'm going first. The episode I voted for, or I selected, I should say, that was the best all-time Saved by the Bell episode, is The Fabulous Belding Boys, season 2, episode 15. If you watch the prior episode, the class looked like they all aged about 2 years from that episode to this one. So I'm not sure about the release of the sequences, Joseph. We talked a little bit about that in the beginning, where when you look through Hulu, it's everything sort of out of sequence.
Yeah, it's way out of.
Yeah, it's way out of sequence.
Hairstyles are different, heights are different. So don't try to go by that. But I'm just going by the episode number here. The plot of this episode was that the class was going on a field trip. Of course, every episode has to present an obstacle, and the first obstacle is introduced in the form of Mr. Dicker. Silly bypasses all California state teaching guidelines and says everyone will fail his class, or he predicts they'll fail his class because of this difficult test he plans to administer, which Zach hilariously metaphorically compares to being on a bad first date with 4 zits on your forehead, which is like a very 90s joke. Mr. Belding quickly banishes our first axe problem by giving Mr. Dickerson a vacation. I assure you that none of the staff writers have ever worked in the public school system. You can't just, I don't know. Okay, at the 6:14 mark, we are introduced to Mr. Dickerson's substitute, our main man on this show, who we swiftly discover is Mr. Belding's brother, Rod, played by Edward Blatchford. Now, a few things about Rod. He looks like a cross between Michael Bolton and a white wide receiver from the 1988 Denver Broncos roster. He has a very time-defining look. Like, you can only look like this from like 1988 to 1991 and expect to get laid or not to get laughed at. I mean, you can't look like that past that year. Here's something that shocked me, by the way. He appeared in The Last of the Mohicans, this actor did. He's the only guy in the history of Hollywood who has acted alongside Dustin Diamond and Daniel Day-Lewis. Can you believe that? Here's the cool history substitute, and he doesn't give a damn about grades or whatever the fuck the school board of trustees says. And in this episode, Mr. Belding is planning a class field trip. He calls in the committee to his office, which consists of all the main characters and 2 random background characters who we never see or hear from again. It's typical Saved by the Bell fare. I want to talk a little bit about one of the background characters. So one of these random characters was added in simply to insult fat people. This character's name is Milton, and we used to joke about him because he looked like my brother a little bit. He has 3 lines in the whole goddamn episode, and 2 of those lines are him suggesting to go visit like chocolate factories for this class field trip because, fat people always want to go to places that have food, right? Fuck the sun, fuck hiking. I want to see how they make chocolate. Milton isn't even that fat. I mean, I looked at him, I was like, this guy's getting fat jokes. He's not that fat. We're from the Rio Grande Valley, us 3, which is the most obese region in the United States. This guy could be the starting center of our high school basketball team. Of course, the fat jokes were written for Zach because, yes, give all of us who don't look like teen models insecurities. Do the writers not know that we are eating fucking Cinnamon Toast Crunch and watching this bullshit on a Saturday morning? We want laughs, not body dysmorphia. Anyway, Mr. Belding convinces the class that hiking at Yosemite would make for a fine class field trip. To set the stage for Zach to further make fun of Milton as he's gasping for precious air at such a high elevation. Later in this episode, Rod Belding tells the class that hiking is for pussies and whitewater rafting is where it's at. And of course, Slater takes full advantage of this statement to engage the class with his toxic masculinity and says it's a good idea and he's done it before. As Rod bonds with the class by having them jump on a raft in the gym and having the leads make out with each other because, fuck the school board, Mr. Belding admonishes him and making Mr. Belding look out of touch. The final act shows Rod Belding performing the biggest asshole move in TV history. He leaves behind these high school kids to go hook up with a stewardess. Why, Bob?
Because she was a 10.
She was a 10, of course. Belding covers for his brother, and Zach overhears the whole thing. Zach and Belding have a very special Walter White and Jesse Pinkston moment at the end where they decide, hey, you know what? You're there for me. I'm there for you. Let's do this. So this episode set the tone for everything afterwards. Number 1, Mr. Belding is now a sympathetic character. Number 2, Zach is no longer a major foil for Belding. They start bonding after this. That's probably why we saw him in the bedroom, Bob, after those episodes.
Eating pizza, drinking Pepsi.
And this is Dennis Haskins' best performance. I thought he deserved an Emmy. He was convincing. He was, just fantastic in this episode. I thought this episode was funny. It was a quick rewatch. It was very dated. And just the fact that Rod Belding, the world's biggest asshole, could just come in and be an asshole for 15 minutes and then leave. I thought, no wonder he got to work with Daniel Day-Lewis because this guy was an acting juggernaut. What do you guys think about this episode?
It's a great episode. It really is. But I mean, and I know you could say this about a lot of episodes, but there was definitely some inconsistencies or some things you see now when you look back at it and you're like, that can't happen. How the fuck is a substitute teacher allowed to take a group of kids whitewater rafting? What the fuck? Who's allowing this kind of shit? There's no way in hell that would work in any school district nowadays. No way. The sub going on a field trip, whitewater rafting. I doubt that. I highly doubt that. It was a really good episode. One really memorable because you kind of got to see a little more insight into Mr. Belding. I know we mentioned this at the beginning, how, it was great how they showcased all the individual characters. They had an episode where they really got to shine, and we really did get to see Belding shine here in his tone and the way he acts with his brother, and you kind of feel for the guy because he's trying to do his best and he's trying to keep the kids safe and do stuff that's right for the kids, and also deal with his dickhead of a brother. But the inconsistency of it that kind of threw me off. You said that Mr. Belding and Zach bonded there at the end, which is really cool because they kind of had a different relationship after that. I wish they had still, Zach was still kind of, would poke the bear a little bit and do some stupid shit or crazy shit and, get in trouble for it. But Mr. Belding always kind of looked after him after that, which I thought was really cool. But other than the main thing I had a problem with it, the only thing is they're allowing a substitute to come in and take the kids on a whitewater rafting trip where there's a lot of underage drinking and sex probably going to be happening.
Joseph?
Well, first off, I was confused whether or not you actually liked this episode, man. The way you went into it, I was like, does he like this episode, or is he talking shit about it?
A little bit of both. I think the more absurd it is, the more I love it. So
but yeah, no, I agree with some things that Bob said as far as like exactly like what the fuck is this situation with the Rod Belding and this substitute teacher status. First off, Mr. Dickerson, that guy apparently is psychotic, and not just the fact that he told like his students, you're not going to pass my test. I think he's insane. Almost a Freddy Krueger, like the way he was haunting their thoughts. We saw that scene where they're like studying in Zach's room, and he's like appearing on all their books and like just saying mean things to them. Magic Johnson's poster. I mean, like all that shit. I was like, this guy is psycho. And so when they tell us the students and the audience at home that he walked in. What is it they say? He walked in and said some mean things or something, and
I think he gave Belding detention.
Oh, he gave him detention, yeah. And so Belding decided that he needed a vacation. No, he was psycho. You fired him. I'm sure he got more than a vacation. There's some questions on that, because suddenly, like you said, Rod Belding is now the substitute. Nepotism laws, I'm not sure of that situation, but so he's there, and you think maybe he's gonna be there for a day or two until they get like a legit teacher or some situation like that. No, he's there for, I guess, a week or so. How the hell is he gonna tell the students, you don't got to take the test? I mean, there's some serious violations here. What the hell is going on? He basically lied to his brother, telling him, oh yeah, they all passed the test, don't worry about it, it's all good. No, there's some consequences later. This is going to be a scandal or some shit. Come to find out that these grades weren't earned. But so there's that. And then Rod Belding ends up being a dick because she was a 10 and her name was Ingrid.
I mean, his name was Rod and he was a dick.
I want to see who this Ingrid girl is, because whitewater rafting sounds like fun.
It also sounds dangerous for a goddamn substitute teacher.
Yes,
to be
exactly. Like,
teens.
Who the fuck? Like, what parents didn't say like, yeah, let's see your qualifications and whatnot. Anyway, but yeah, there's that. I thought it seemed a little like rushed. I'm not sure the time frame on this episode, because it seems like they're planning. They clearly have a budget for a trip, and that's cool. But then Belding decides on what they're gonna do, and then it's like, next week we're going. Like, no, don't you gotta like plan that shit? Don't you gotta have like parent permission forms? They're gonna be sleeping away.
Movie theater, right?
You gotta have some. So it just seemed kind of rushed. And then the whole situation too, with like, okay, now we're going whitewater rafting. We're going to Colorado instead. Where's Yosemite? I'm not sure where is that. And then at the end, like when Belding's, he's gonna save the trip and he's doing something awesome for the kids. They're getting on the bus like right now. Are you packed? Like, you're in a fucking suit. Like, you're not ready to go.
He was a vet.
Okay, right. He's ready to go.
Yosemite is in California. For some reason,
Yosemite's in California. They're so maybe that was easier to plan, but then suddenly they're going to Colorado. Like, what? I don't know. So yeah, I mean, great episode. It's funny. It gave us a very funny line that we still to this day quote, hey everybody, the buses are here.
Speaking of that guy, I wanted to find out his IMDb, and I couldn't find him anywhere. He's not listed on the episode. So I Googled Milton Saved by the Bell, but they've had so many nerds named Melvin, Milton, they sort of recycle that name. So when you search for Milton, Saved by the Bell, they give you a totally other character. So I don't know what happened to this guy. I mean, he had 3 lines, everything, he got made fun of. He got poked in the belly like the Pillsbury Doughboy from Zach. And I don't know whatever happened to this guy. I mean,
the only nerd I care to know what happened to was Louise, because she was hot. She was probably just as hot as Jesse and Lisa Turtle.
Absolutely. But great episode. Rod Belding, biggest dick that ever guest starred. More so than Jesse's brother, more so than Jeff, more so than the Croatian chess player. All those guys, they all don't compare to Rod Belding. So let's go to your pick, Bob. What did you have?
I decided to go with Cut Day. It was season 4, episode 23. As we all know, I mean, when we were in high school, Cut Day has always been that kind of rite of passage, that one day during the school year that you always look forward to. When we were on our Cut Day, I'm sure we cut school, went to parties, that kind of thing. So it was an episode that people could actually relate to. And looking back on it now, watching the episode over and over again, I watched it like 4 times over the past weekend. I'm like, man, it must have really sucked for Zach to be stuck in that position. He wasn't able to cut on Cut Day. Why? Because Belding told him, you already have 9 unexcused absences. So you go to Cut Day, that's 10, you get suspended.
Like Ferris Bueller, right?
Yeah. No. So Zach's like, his friends are like, you can't get suspended. Your parents will kill you. So Zach, of course, comes up with this clever scheme that I'm going to be cutting all day. So he makes a bet with Slater, as they normally do, makes a $100 bet. Fuck, who's making $100 bets in high school? I didn't have $100 to bet in high school. Jesus Christ.
You bet like CDs and shit.
Your chocolate milk at lunch. Okay, so Zach makes his $100 bet with Slater that he's going to be able to cut. He'll be able to cut and meet him at any other place that him and Kelly are going to, which is kind of strange because Jesse decides to stay on Cut Day because her and some new dude that's there in class want to protest the styrofoam cup company. I was like, of all things you want to protest is the styrofoam cup company that's delivering styrofoam cups to your school, which later it's like one old bald dude that brings in one really small box of styrofoam cups. Like, you're protesting this poor bastard who's probably making minimum wage, you jerks. And Slater, he goes on to do like what everybody else is doing, but he's with Kelly, which is strange because Slater and Jesse are an item at this point. Zach's like, well, wherever y'all go, I'm going. So, of course, the first one, Belding's like, I'm going to be on you all day. I'm going to be looking out for you all day. There's no way in hell you're skipping that on my watch. So, Zach comes up with clever schemes. On the first, he pays off one of the nerds to get him out of class the first time, saying he has a huge balance at the library. So he books it. He almost gets caught in the hallway again by Belding, but he's pretending to protest with Jesse and this new dude. He, at the very end, Slater kind of gets him because he calls in and a really cruel joke. He makes it seem like the blind teacher just won $2 million in the lottery. What a fucking dick. And she like goes
She's like, fuck you.
Yeah, fuck you. I'm out of this place. You'll never see me again. Screw you all. And she books it, you know what I mean? Only I'm sure she's going to be like Jeffrey in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, all heartbroken and pissed off at when she finds out it's not true. So Slater pulls that shit. So Belding's stuck with him in the class. Fortunately, Zach got a box of chocolate covered, grasshoppers and beetles, and he gives to Belding and gets him sick, and he's able to sneak away. There's just a couple of things. How is the beach? So Zach managed to go to the Max, which I think is a restaurant that's kind of connected to the school. Why? Because they're rich, obviously. He manages to go to the beach, that little fake beach scene that seems to be extremely close to the school. And he always manages to get back to class afterwards. Like he makes it just in time for the next class. Goes to the movie theater as well. So I thought it was kind of funny how they make it seem like, hey, I can go anywhere. I have 45 minutes and go to the beach and back. Fuck yeah. It all ends at the very end where Zach, again, he's trying to win the bet. But of course he goes to that kind of moral dilemma that he always does in every episode. And he's like, holy shit, Jesse, he can see Jesse and this new dude that's protesting with her, kind of like falling for each other, and they're heading to the Max. And he knows that Slater's there with Kelly. And, he knows that Slater's still flirting with Kelly, even though he's dating Jesse because he's a douchebag. And he kind of tries to push Jesse to go in a different place. Why don't you go to the beach? Why don't you go to the movies? And now they want to go to the Max. So he gets to the Max early. And even though Slater's like, you lost the bet, dude. You lost the bet. He doesn't even give a shit about the bet at that point in time. He's just trying to prevent his two friends from seeing each other with another person. It all ends, of course, with Jesse and Slater. They have a deep talk and they break up the breakup is amicable and they do it. They're really friendly and they decide, maybe it's better that they see other people, which is kind of cool, but it kind of sad. And it kind of gave the audience that kind of the proper way to break up with somebody, to mutually kind of, agree to like, hey, sometimes, very mature. Like, it's just not working out. I want to see other people. You obviously want to see other people. And, they kind of go and everybody's kind of freaking out that they didn't argue because they're always arguing. Jesse has Slater in a headlock during one episode. So they're always fighting and arguing. It was just one of those episodes that was really good. It had a little bit of everything. It had a perfect mix of Lisa and Screech, going back and forth with each other, him being a goofball and her burying him alive at the beach. Slater flirting with another girl, Jesse flirting with another guy, Zach doing whatever he can to pull off a stunt and win a bet like he normally does. And you got to see a good amount of Mr. Belding there. So it was just a great episode. It reminded me a lot of my skip day, thinking about it and looking back on it. And it was one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, I agree. It was this one was a funny episode. I found it, no offense, Randy, it was more entertaining to watch than yours because Rod was
so it was a 10.
But no, it was really cool. I thought it was a really fun episode. I had an issue with his name was Graham. This
yes.
Like, what the fuck was up with this guy? He was like Captain Douchebag Planet. He was a little intense. Like, come on, bro, slow down. There was a lot of. I would probably have to go back and watch the episodes before and prior because I wasn't sure on the history of the relationships because it didn't look like Kelly and Zach were together.
No, they weren't.
They weren't apparently. And so we got Jesse and Slater are obviously together or dating or something. I don't know what you want to call them, but
they're going steady.
Because if they were going steady, then they wouldn't have been doing what they were doing. But anyway, so
they say it at the end of the episode, like they want to go steady.
So there's that. I was this guy, what Bob said. That poor old man. I mean, they gave him a fucking heart attack. It's just this old guy walking in with one box, and he's like scared out of his mind, and they're yelling in his face with signs. The guy looked like he was gonna shit his pants and have a heart attack. It's fucking horrible. If this guy Graham, and this is a problem sometimes with these with this show specifically, and it's throughout the whole series. This guy suddenly is there. He's introduced. He's apparently he's an environmentalist. He's got all these he thinks a lot like Jesse. He wants to fight for the same causes, yet she's never noticed him before, so that was kind of like weird. I mean, if she was so infatuated with him and his way of thinking and the things that he wanted to do, so that was kind of like where the fuck's this guy been? And then you never see him again, so that's another thing that comes into play.
Yeah, it was just like the new chick that Zach and Slater fought over. She was there that one episode. They threw chingasos and then she was like,
Joanna,
yeah, everything.
So it's I mean, it happens. I liked the scenes. I liked seeing how Zach was going to get out of each situation and show up. The Mac scene was cool. They had the bumper pool, man. I haven't seen bumper pool in so long. I haven't seen a table out anywhere in forever. But bumper pool was full. Bumper pool was cool. We used to go to the local Boys and Girls Club Park Recreation, and they had like 2 or 3 tables, and it was a lot of fun to play bumper pool. I really liked that one. So it's cool to see that. Yeah, the thing with so Zach, he's not with Kelly, so he's kind of like noticing these things that are going on and noticing that Jesse's kind of like taking interest in. I mean, such a cool guy, like Bob said. He doesn't want to see in the end his friends is going out
get hurt,
having an argument or get hurt with each other at the same time. I mean, he's kind of like look like what's going on with you, Kelly? But I guess, like you said, he's not with her, so it doesn't matter. True, Lisa and Screech aren't like fighting with each other. Not that they ever do, but hey, they actually they coexisted together throughout the episode nicely. I just had a problem with that guy Graham. I just thought he was a huge douchebag. I was like, this guy's too much for me, man. Like, shut the fuck up, get out of here.
That's what she said.
The thing about it is it was very much a Ferris Bueller ripoff, all the way down to the 10 absences where Mr. Belding was playing Mr. Rooney and Zach was doing his best Ferris Bueller, just skipping out. So it had that vibe. Graham, I thought he had no chemistry with Jesse. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is he the guy in Speed? Because isn't he in the bus in Speed? Like,
I think so, right? He is. He does come out.
You're talking about Keanu Reeves, right?
No, he's one of the other
guys. Whoa, he had that kind of.
He plays like the same intensity that he played Graham that he does the bus passenger in Speed. I think he has maybe a few lines, which is crazy because the guy that played Cameron on Ferris Bueller's Day Off is in the bus with Speed in Speed, and this is a Ferris Bueller ripoff. So small little connections there that I made. But Graham, I felt had no chemistry. I thought it was just a big miscast. He looked like he was in college, which is very common. And you, even when he was acting with Elizabeth Berkley, you see the chemistry with Mario Lopez or Mark Paul Gosselaar, with any of these girls. This guy had zero chemistry. There's a time where, she says, "Wow, you think just like me," and she gives him a hug, and it's like the most awkward sort of like she hugs him around the neck. Yeah, it's very like tense. It doesn't seem it's like the way you would hug somebody you haven't seen in 15 years, but you didn't really like, and you just saw at a reunion or whatever. So they had like zero chemistry. So that subplot was,
he was playing hard to get, sir. He was playing hard to get.
And you could tell, I mean, because Elizabeth Berkley is a good actress, right? So you could tell there was a lot of interest from her to him, but I couldn't tell any interest from him to her. It felt like he was just completely in his own mind. The whole Slater and Jesse relationship, which is funny because, they made a lot of points that they were miserable around each other. I think they ended up with each other afterwards, which is funny, but I just thought it was funny how they were always talking about, we're always fighting, we're always, at each other's throat. And you saw the chemistry that Kelly had with Slater, which they're probably better connected because of the way their background is, both athletes or whatever. And you're right, Bob. I think that the fact that they didn't go through hurdles to try to wrap up their relationship, they just said, look, we're not happy with each other. Let's fucking move on and be friends. I think taught a lot of people. Now, I'm not saying this is the most rewatchable episode just because of the whole, parallels to Ferris Bueller. I think Graham really puts a damper on it. But, I mean, it does show maturity between the characters.
There's one thing I want to mention, though. One thing I know Joseph's mentioned this a lot, and he probably wasn't going to say it today. I was texting him earlier. I was like, you better say it, goddammit. What the fuck is Kelly doing? She's supposed to be best friends with Jesse as well. What the fuck is she doing flirting with Jesse's boyfriend at the beach while playing bumper pool, while sitting at the max? What the fuck is up with that? That's bullshit.
He does feel guilty. She does feel guilt. She does show signs of
He
guilt,
wasn't feeling guilty when he was showing her how to slide the damn cue between her fingers.
I had another thing that I wanted to say too. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, like I thought Slater calling in that fake. Oh my god, dude! Like you want to kill somebody after that. Like somebody tells you like you won $2 million and it's some fuck. You don't joke like that. You don't pull that kind of joke, especially when you quit your job. like I was like, okay, forget everything about this episode. I was like, Graham, he's a douchebag. But Slater is the dick of this episode, and Zach is the victim because And I thought to myself, like 10 unexcused absences. I was like, oh, okay, you're suspended. Big fucking deal. Like, are you why? Because your parents are gonna ground you? Like, come on, you're Zach Morris. You're gonna get out of it anyway. So what are you scared of? Just cut.
That's true, and I have to agree with you on that. That was probably the cruelest of all jokes, and there is a litany of cruel jokes when it comes to Zach Morris. But Slater, and they calling from a payphone that he's proud of it. Hey, did you get my telegram? Like, I fucking pulled one over,
motherfucker.
You're gonna win $100, bitch.
Fucking teacher's probably gonna go get wasted somewhere.
He wants to ruin somebody's life for $100. That is so fucked up. Somebody who's got a vision impairment, and she looks like she's a struggling teacher.
I know.
She was funny. Whoever that actress, she played her part.
Yeah, her life wasn't that great to begin with, and you just fucking ruined her life, Slater. Hope you're happy. Mario Lopez.
I like her reaction when Mr. Veldy was like, "Hey, like, how the fuck would the principal be delivering this message?" So,
a fucking telegram. Who the fuck sends telegrams anymore?
This was the 90s. But even back then, that was dated.
Oh, shit, it could have been like, we just got a phone call that you just won $2 million. Oh, we got a telegram.
My favorite reaction is when she tells Belding pretty much, go fuck off. I'm getting the fuck out of here. Fuck you and your school.
That's awesome.
And it runs into the wall.
She runs into the wall.
She did a good job. She was awesome.
That poor lady's going to have to show up that following Monday and beg for a job back.
Oh man, douchebag Slater. That was horrible. Joseph, let's go on to your episode. Which episode did you pick?
Douchebag Slater. I picked All in the Mall, season 3, episode 16, according to the Wikipedia pages and all kinds of, and even Hulu. Again, I'm not 100% sure on that, but hey, let's say season 3, episode 16, All in the Mall. So basically, this quick recap of this episode: the gang, minus Jessie for some reason. I'm not sure why she's not in this episode. The gang, Slater, Zach, Lisa, Kelly, and Screech make plans to go see a U2 concert, and in order to get the best seats available, they devise a plan to have Screech camp out in the mall, no less, overnight in front of the ticket booth or will call. In doing so, the plan is executed perfectly. They're first in line, and in the morning, Screech is there. They give he has all their money, and he's there. He's supposed to buy the best tickets. Their plan is just to go to the show. Because Screech is doofus at times, he's asked whether or not where he wants the seats to be. I believe it orchestra or mezzanine, yeah. And not knowing what to pick and fearing that he's going to get his ass kicked by Zach, he leaves the line and asks some guy to save his spot, which we later learn doesn't speak English.
Can you say whole speech again in Spanish?
So he leaves the line to go ask the guys where do you want the tickets. In doing so, obviously losing the chance to see losing the chance to buy tickets or the best tickets available. Not long after this, the girls and Zach and Slater sitting down at some benches find a bag. Lisa finds a bag which contains $5,000. It was a pretty big stack of bills. If you can say that was $5,000, I'm not sure. It was like 5,000 in ones or 5,000 in fives. I'm not sure. But anyway, so they come up with the plan after finding the $5,000 to buy as many remaining tickets as they can available and sell them to make a profit. Basically, they're going to be scalpers or going to turn into criminals. After doing so, they realize that they're being followed by or being watched by two shady looking characters. Kind of I don't want to call them mob looking. I mean, but they were kind of dressed in black, and I think they both had leather jackets. I know for sure one had leather jacket, and they do kind of look a little weird. But anyway, they go through a bunch of different series and attempts to outrun and outsmart these two guys, with still hoping to get tickets for a newly announced second concert because the first one was so successful. They devised to plan to all sleep at the mall all night in a tent in a sporting goods store, which I don't know how these 5 people fit in that tent, but in order to buy the max amount of tickets the next day for the show each, and then again turn a profit. They're doing illegal things here, but hey, let's roll with it. In the end, it turns out the two gentlemen catch up with them and continue to chase them, and through a bunch of different series of events in trying to get away, including posing as mannequins in a wedding store.
That was the funniest scene of that.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah. I loved it when somebody would pass by and they'd stop and freeze. They'd freeze. That was hilarious. In the end, it turns out that they get caught by the two guys, and they're like, in the situation, and they go to the police, and the police are part of it. And it turns out that the whole thing is a hidden camera situation show. It's called, what do they call it? Candid video, because they can't say candid camera. Right. They say you're on candid video, and all these cameras suddenly circle them. And it's like, how the fuck did you not notice all these cameras following you around? But anyway, so it must have been a bunch of hidden cameras. But in the end, they're part of the show, and the prize is 5 front row tickets to the U2 concert that they went through so much trouble trying to get tickets to. I liked this show. I picked this one because I thought it was really nice to see the group minus Jessie outside of the Bayside and the Max area, because like you say, Bob, yeah, like that the Max may have been like super close to the school. It had to be, because they were always there. They were there between classes or like during off periods. So I mean, it had to be super close. So it was real nice to see. This whole episode takes place in the mall, which is nice. We're missing Jessie, but that's okay. It was nice to see them go through a bunch of yeah, I know, because I like Jessie. Yeah. It was real nice to see them away from the school. Like I said, plenty of fun, plenty of hijinks. I know there's some situations where you're like, I mean, I think when this came out, my young teenage mind or whatever mind actually kind of feared for them, thinking like, okay, are they really in trouble? Now rewatching it, obviously I know, like, of course they're not in trouble. This is a show and something's got to be up. But when I was younger, I did maybe think that, oh shit, are they in trouble? Are these like really criminals? Maybe whatever. No, whatever. So it was really nice to see that. You were worried for them, reminiscent of what is that episode the mystery episode, because you're like, when you were younger watching that, you were kind of like, okay, well, what the fuck's the situation? Are they really dying? So it's cool when you're younger, and so that's what this episode reminded me of, and that's I think I mentioned that one as an honorable mention too,
I mentioned it for sure.
So and it's a great episode. So this one kind of reminded me of that. It was really good to see that the hijinks weren't too over the top, like you mentioned. The wedding, the mannequin scene was very funny. Screech running around in that stupid costume. Lisa says that later, like when they're in the tent, she, I guess, hits him. We don't see it, and she says, "Get rid of that stupid costume." So it's and it made me think, like, well, if I was their age, like I enjoyed it because I was like, it made me think about like, what would I do if I was I think they're 16, 17. I don't think they're 18-year-olds in this film, in these series. So 16, 17-year-old, and I find like, hey, Bob, we're out at the mall or something. We're 16, 17, and we find a fucking bag full of $5,000. What would we do? What the hell would we do? First off, we'd probably leave the mall immediately because we're not gonna we're gonna sneak out of there and
screw you too.
We're gonna get the hell out of here and just go split $5,000, buddy. So I think about like, what would I do if I had just suddenly found $5,000? Maybe we would think like,
Ray-Bans for the outfielder.
Ray-Bans for the outfielder. So it was really cool. I really enjoyed it. I really liked. I thought it was funny, and I like at the end how they get the tickets, and Zach's like, you know how much money we can make off of these, and they're like, no, and they're like, all pissed off, like quit that shit, man. Like, so really enjoyable episode. I think you can always watch it and laugh, and really good time. So that's why I picked this one.
So here's my problem with this. Anytime the U2 concert, first of all, this was 1991. This episode takes place in 1991. U2 wasn't on tour in 91. They were on the Lovetown tour in 1990, Zoo TV tour in 91. And here's a thing that was a trope for these teen shows. Usually they would say like, hey, we're going to go to this concert, and they couldn't get the concert tickets. And for some reason at the end, the band would show up, but it's usually like a band like Color Me Bad that they run into like at a restaurant.
Milli Vanilli, something like that.
Milli Vanilli, yeah.
Girl, it's true.
And when you heard U2, you're like, and U2 was already a phenomenal, a huge band back then. And you're thinking, when I remember first watching this episode, I was like, no way is U2 going to come out at the end and run into him at the mall. I mean, you're going to have Bono saying, Screech, you're funny, but you know what's not funny? All the starving children.
That's why they charge so much. That's why they charge so much for the goddamn tickets.
Because the credits would be rolling, and Bono would be like, and the dirty water they got to drink, and because if you've ever been to a U2 concert, that fucker talks for like 2 hours.
He should have come out in the Christmas episode then.
So I mean, I love Bono. U2 is one of my favorite bands, but this doesn't look like a group of people would watch U2. And also some of the people that were in line, like, that guy that didn't speak English, and that older lady, like, I never miss a U2 concert. I'm like, you could tell by the way she pronounced the band's name, she's never heard of them. One of my favorite scenes in that episode was when they're in line and they're thinking about ways to get people out of the line. And here's another fat shaming joke. They get like 2 ice cream cones for that one fat guy, and they're like distracting him. They're like,
It's like they distract the 2 nerdy girls. They distract the 2 nerdy girls, like pretending they're gonna kiss him, and then Kelly and Lisa drop their bags, and the guys run to save them. Then the fucking ice cream joke was funny. It's so stupid.
The way they get the 2 girls was pretty funny too. Why wouldn't the gang stay in line with Screech? This guy's unreliable. He has a series of messing up. He's sleeping on the floor overnight. He did his job. Why didn't these guys say like, okay, Screech, the
Did
booth
his
open?
job.
Yeah, he did his job.
Right. He
It
succeeded.
It wasn't his fault. It wasn't his
I
fault.
know
He did his job.
they were shitting on Screech. The guy spent the night at the mall, and you could have said like, okay, you know what? Ticket booth opens up in 10 minutes. We could stand in line for 10 minutes and buy the tickets together, and then go to the food court and go hit up Foot Locker or whatever. But they were like, Screech, buy the fucking ticket. You've been here all night. Might as well fucking do it by yourself. I thought that was shitty.
Actually, I think a booth opened up as soon as they walked away. I was like,
Yeah.
so
That was
kind of
pretty
shooting
messed
myself
up.
in the foot there, but
And another shitty thing is, when they felt that they were being chased by the two mob guys, they're in the theater, and that's when Screech gets the the Superman outfit.
I didn't
And
even mention this scene.
Zach and Slater are the first two guys to hightail it out of the theater. They're like, we're gonna sneak out, guys, and they just fucking book it and leave.
Everybody go
Screech
one at a time, and they're whistling. Take off and chinga. Take off before everybody else. Leave everybody behind.
They're like, you know what? Let's let the girls leave first. That's because whatever, we want to make sure we'll have your back. Those two guys fucking book it and leave the girls by themselves. I thought that was a shitty thing to do. And there was another thing, and this is kind of a running joke. Lisa is kind of flirting with a shoe store clerk, and the guy looks like he's like 28 years old, and he's flirting with Lisa. So I thought that was kind of off too, But the hidden camera thing, it was an entertaining episode. Both the episodes were great. I'll give you props on this, but he was missing Jesse.
It was definitely missing Jesse, and I thought that it was weird that they're like, we just need those 5 tickets. They could have said like, oh, Jesse's at her aunt's, or she's at her grandma's this weekend. We need to get 6. We can get one for Jesse. It was a good premise, though. Them staying up all night and getting in line for tickets they really want, and then the finding money and the chasing. The only thing that got me about the chasing was like, the guys leave the theater running after them, like not even a second before, because Screech stops and like says something to them. and they like lean back, and then they take off. Like, why aren't they right behind them? They should be right behind them.
Or at least behind Screech, holding him hostage.
Unless they're just fucking with them the whole time.
Fucking Screech gets yogurt.
Which they were.
Yeah, Screech gets fucking yogurt. There's time to get yogurt. I liked when he was like, I'll create a distraction, and he does some like monkey noises around those guys. They're like, what the fuck? They're backing up. You're asking how 5 people fit in a tent. You saw the behind the scenes thing, Joseph. They're all sleeping together, Joseph. That's what it was. That's how they all fit.
That was just too small of a tent.
Why do you think she asked them to take off the costume? It was a really good episode. It was a really funny episode. The premise was awesome. The chase scenes were just really kind of stupid, because you're right next to him. How the fuck are you not? You mean you can't catch Lisa Turtle in fucking heels? You got the 2 mobster young dudes chasing after them. You know what I mean? The episode did have its funny moments. I like how at the very end they end up with that last joke. Yeah, you won 5 free tickets, and Zach's like, "Oh shit, you know how much money we can make for these?" And they kind of hit the money. There was a goof. There was a fuck up in the episode. I don't know if y'all noticed it. So when the last lady in line, they're like, "Hey, what if we give you $100?" And she's like, "Make it 2, honey, and I'm out of here." And like Zach pulls out another 100, and money falls out of his hand, and he kind of looks up at the camera. He looks up at the camera like, "Oh shit!" He reaches down, he swipes it after he gives it to Slater to give to her. That was kind of funny. I like how they kept that in there. It was a big goof. Obviously, he didn't mean to do that, but it was a good episode, man. I don't know. When you mentioned the mall, I was like, holy crap. I completely forgot about that episode. Forgot about it. It's a really funny episode.
And another good one. It's to why the Christmas episode is so good, because it just takes place other than the school. I always like seeing episodes where they're not always at school. Another thing I wanted to say too, because we talked about like they're them being assholes, like with the ice cream and the big guy. Like, having worked in retail before, when Zach goes into the sporting goods store and he's like. He's asking about the footballs, and he's like, "Oh, okay, cool.
Big Skinner."
Yeah, and he's like, getting a bunch of stupid questions, and then be like, "You got any more in the back?" And then the guy comes back with, I think he had like 5 footballs, and he comes out and sees that Zach's gone. He's like, "Motherfucker!" But then he looks at his watch. It's like, "Oh, it's time to close." And then he runs to the door. But for a minute there, he was like, "Son of a bitch." What a dick.
The season starts in 3 months.
Yeah, the season starts in 3 months.
It wasn't entertaining, but like I said,
which by the way, I'm sorry, Bob, you maybe know this more because you've bought a football for your son maybe recently. This football was $30, I think. It was $29 or something. Football, I was like, what the fuck? Are footballs that expensive nowadays?
Footballs are really expensive.
Damn,
really expensive, man. I mean, if you're buying the cheap rubber ones, at Walmart,
but like a regular,
a decent football that you're gonna use for like high school football. Yeah, they're pretty
30
pricey,
years
man.
ago, and
that was 30. Well, they're pigskin.
Inflation.
Yeah.
Inflation.
I was like, as I remember when I was watching that episode, it was like $29.99. I was like, $30 for a football? What the fuck?
That was expensive back then. As I mentioned before, I think the fact that they didn't have Jesse, but I mean, in some sort of ways, it gave more balance to, because this was one of the only episodes where everybody was together in every scene. I mean,
Yeah.
Normally you'll have like a breakaway scene where they're at Zach's house, or they're, two characters are together, but everybody was pretty much together in every scene in this one. So I think it might have been overkill with Jessie there, but I think the show was missing her. And I think had she been on the show, I think it would have made it more entertaining, because she could have added some levity to
I'm gonna have to look this up
exactly.
and find
She
out.
probably would have been the level-headed one, because nobody seemed to be the level-headed one.
Yeah, everybody was fucking dumb.
Everybody was panicking and saying,
everybody's like, let's spend money, let's make money.
Although I did think it was extremely funny and clever that they're like, we're gonna sneak into the sporting goods store and sleep in a tent. That was pretty funny.
Guys, let's wrap up with a few questions. Favorite main character and why?
I'd probably have to say Zach. I'll just say because of the hijinks, because of he wasn't so much like I mentioned earlier in the beginning. He's not what we see in these typical. He wasn't a jock, so he's not the jock star athlete, and neither really was Slater. If you want to look at it, he's not the way I'm saying. I'm trying to get my point across is Zach wasn't the rich jock, star prep of the school. Yes, he was. I don't think he was so rich. Yeah. Well, he did try to play basketball once.
Zach.
And then apparently he was going to play basketball too, but he wasn't known for being the jock.
Mm-hmm.
He was a popular guy. Aside from his jokes, many, and the cut downs to any kind of dweeb geek nerd or whatever that they labeled in the show, he was generally a nice guy. His best friend growing up was the geek. I mean, he's a good he ends up being a good dude. Aside from all his hijinks and scams and things like that, you see that he's a good guy deep down, and he has a good heart, and he loved this one girl that fooled around with his heart nonstop.
Say it, Joseph. Say it, Joseph. Say it, goddamn.
Played mind games with him, right?
Played mind games with him so many times.
Say it, Joseph.
No,
you need to say the words.
So my pick is I'm gonna pick Zach. Yeah.
He also brought all his half of his class from Indiana from the junior high show to California for Saved by the Bell.
But he left the white Mario Lopez back.
We didn't get that.
Indiana.
We didn't get into that, but.
Got rid of Miss Bliss and the white Mario Lopez. My favorite character, I'm gonna have to agree it's Zach. But what's hilarious and what's really cool and creative about the show, Zach is the comic relief. As much as we have the Steve Urkels and those kind of characters, which was Screech. Zach was just as much the comic relief as Screech was. You know what I mean? Screech had his Screech was more the one-liner saying goofy shit, and then Zach was the more like getting himself into goofy shit and those situations. He was a comic relief character, but he was also the cool character, also the popular character. So he wore many hats. I think that's why he was my favorite character. He always got into some shit and then realized, like, you know what, I messed up or I made a mistake and I need to, atone for that. But he was funny. He was always doing shit that's way out there. He really does make the show even more so that his Mark Paul Gosselaar in real life is nothing like Zach Morris. Like, they're completely different character, which makes it even better that he did such a great acting job. Mario Lopez was Slater. I'm sorry. Was cool, the jock, but he was always a douche, man. He always seemed like a douche, always trying to steal his buddy's girl too. So he was kind of a douche. Kelly Kapowski, Joseph never said it, so I will. She was a little bit of a whore. Jessie was awesome. I like Jessie a lot. She was the smart one, but she was really stubborn. Lisa was kind of she was there. She was funny. She was the rich friend, you know what I mean? Always shopping and shit. But I think Zach Morris is my favorite character.
I think, Zach Morris was great. Kind of like a blueprint for like a Ryan Reynolds sort of modern.
Yes,
modern day,
I think that's a really good comparison, man. Like, extremely funny and goofy and still being like the cool guy. You know what I mean? That works.
Yeah, and he worked the writing wasn't always A+ quality, but he worked the script well, talented. Also want to recognize Dustin Diamond for a guy who was considerably younger. Well, I mean, not considerably, but he was 2 or 3 years younger than the rest of the cast at a different point of his life. he worked all, they gave him all like the old guy jokes. Like he knew like what Mr. Ed was and what, Charlie Chaplin was. I think his physical comedy as well as his delivery, I feel bad for him, having him pass away this year, because I didn't think he had I think he could have had a better career. I'm not saying he would have been, an A-lister, but I think Dustin Diamond as a young actor was very talented. I know Mark Paul Gosselaar has mentioned that, he used to memorize everybody's lines, not just his lines. And you could see in the early episodes, kind of like Will Smith, he would mumble the lines on Fresh Prince. Dustin Diamond would do the same on Saved by the Bell, because he wanted to know all the cues. He wanted to get all the jokes. And he was a gifted young actor, a gifted young comedian. I mean, kind of like if he would have done Saved by the Bell, like in, 2012 or something, he could have been like Shia LaBeouf or I don't know what. But I just felt like his career could have been better.
So you called him gifted and buff. Did you see that little movie he made? Is that what you're saying? That?
No, I did not watch that movie.
I honestly think Betamax. I honestly think that he could have had actually a bigger career, better career. Maybe his biggest downfall was that he played the Screech character so well, so he kind of got typecast as Screech.
Yeah,
he did the college years, which was fine.
Yes.
And then after the college years, he jumped back into Saved by the Bell, the next class. So he kind of typecast himself into continuously playing the same role. Could have done a movie or maybe a different TV show where he's a similar character but different. And I think he even mentioned in one of his interviews, like he would go audition for a part and they would say like, you did a great job, but all we can see is Screech. We can't see this character. But yeah, so it kind of screwed him in the long run.
Yeah, I did write it in my notes in rewatching these episodes and some other ones here and there when they're on TV or something like that. It is kind of hard to see his character or because they made him like the butt of the jokes, like you say, and make him like it. And this is because he's smart. He's a very smart individual. He has a high IQ. At one point, he wins valedictorian, right? I think before they graduate, and he says, "I don't."
Yeah, he's a heart of gold.
He's a heart of gold. He knows how much it means to Jesse, so he doesn't want the award, but he then gets it anyway. So he's clearly smart and intelligent, yet they make him like this goof and this bozo, so to speak. So that I did write that down. I was like, that part's a little bit hard to watch on the show. Like, is it because that he's a smart guy? I mean, he invented a robot. I mean,
yeah,
he's like Steve Urkel, man. I think they're just the equivalent. Extremely smart, but they play this goofball character.
And I liked
always making mistakes and doing goofy shit.
And I liked the character Slater. I thought, that he's a star athlete. He's a jock. He comes from a military family or a service family, and they clearly don't. They've never made it seem like they had everything or had means. It seems like his family, especially his dad, as we learned, had to work hard for what they had to change his name, things like that. And you think that would be a little bit more on Slater's character, but he's like we've mentioned, he's a misogynistic. He's a little bit of a know-it-all, but and he has his moments where he's humble. But you think that from his background that we're told that we're led to believe that he would have just been a little bit more humble in his attitude.
They definitely had money. Motherfucker was making $100 bets with Zach left and right.
I mean, those Z Cavaricis, those stonewashed pleated pants, and those cost a lot of money back.
How much is that perm?
I don't know if you've heard the interviews. He said that he got that hairstyle because it was popular with Mel Gibson in the Lethal Weapon movies. He wanted to have his hair look like Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon, which I thought was funny.
He put a little too much Soul Glow in it, though.
And we're all big fans of the Zach to the Future podcast. Mark Paul Gosselaar is so awesome. Good on it. He is so good on that. The host is great too. But man, check it out. And they go deep into every episode. We're just doing one episode where we talk about our favorites. But if you want to get a deep dive in knowledge,
watch Screech's Betamax.
Yes, exactly. Listen to Zach to the Future, because it's such a great podcast. I want to ask you guys, what about Tori? I know, like, for the background is that the show was supposed to stop. They did the graduation episode, and they filmed 11 episodes for the last season, but they got called back to do another 11 episodes. Tiffany Amber Thiessen and Elizabeth Berkley had signed off and said, hey, we're done with the show. So those shows with Tori are the last shows that were filmed, but they were put in the middle of the season And so that's why the sequencing is even more screwed up. What were your thoughts on her, 11 episode run?
Well, I guess the girls are supposed to be touring, right? Because they're doing the modeling, right, in Paris or some shit like that. I think that's how the storyline goes, or maybe I'm wrong about that. Tori was 100% cool.
Sure.
Yeah, Tori was cool. I really liked the Tori character. I think they brought in somebody who's completely different than what the other two girls were, so that's good. A completely different personality. I think she got along really well, meshed well with the other characters. Kept the guys on their toes because she was really tough too. I liked those episodes. I thought they were really funny episodes. I was watching the masquerade ball where she makes.
I was gonna say that.
Where Screech is dressed like Gumby and Mario Lopez is a spaceman outfit. They fucking dance and make out. I won't tell anybody if you won't. At the very end of that, I thought that was a funny episode.
Like, who's gonna kiss each other with their like outfits on, their costumes on? I mean, it made it funny, right?
They did the army, the men versus the women one. I mean, not the army one, the men versus the women for the money, where they do the limbo and they do the bake off and they do all that shit. Her episodes are really, really good. I like those. I really did like those a lot.
The fact that, like you mentioned, that they were so like out of whack or out of place because of the situation, it does make it a little like weird and sometimes I think in the early episodes for her, because it's just what did you say, 11 episodes, I thought that her chemistry with Zach wasn't so great. Sometimes you see that. I didn't see her interact with Screech so much. And her and Lisa don't seem to be as friendly, I guess, if you want to look at it, as like Lisa is with the other girls. But I mean, they're funny episodes. They're interesting. It's a little like like you said, because she's a completely different character, and she clashes with Zach a bit, and they eventually like start dating. But then like Kelly's back, so it's like, but I don't know, it just
gets totally thrown off. And I'm sure the producer said, hey, look, it's the last season, let's just wrap this up, just get away with it. Last question, who is your favorite minor character? Maybe a character that came out in a few episodes or did a one episode. Who are some, and we mentioned a whole bunch of them already, but is there one that sticks out in your mind?
Not really, to be honest with you.
Jesus Christ.
Big Pete, come on.
Oh, big. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. You got it. You good. That's a good one. Yeah. He at least came out a good amount of time. He came out in the summer ones too. Yeah. A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. He was there.
He was working at the shop too.
Yeah, he came out on like one episode, I think the volleyball episode or something, where they have to win, where Jack needs to win the car if the team wins. So yeah, he came out a lot. So good for him. And Screech's girlfriend, played by Tori Spelling. Tori Spelling.
Yeah.
What's her name?
Violet.
Violet.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was in that funny chess episode.
It's because it's kind of hard to pick like a minor character when they're just so like they show up for one episode and they're gone. But you got Big Pete and Violet showed up a good amount of times.
She did a few episodes. I mentioned Louise earlier. She was like the hot geek
Louise
girl.
Louise comes out a few times too.
Yeah, and the other one, the other geek dude that he takes Zach's phone because he owes him money. He ends up taking his
the one that got him out of Cut Day, right? The one that got him out of you owe $67.
Yeah. Kind of like an Eddie Deason from Greece, kind of sort of
a funny dude, but not 40 years old playing a high school kid, right?
One of the ones that I think is underrated. I think it was early in the series. There was a DJ and he was doing live from the Max, and there's one scene where he says, "Hey, do you want me to order you something?" He's like, "I ain't eating shit from this restaurant. Go get me sushi down the street."
Hey, speaking of Max, nobody mentioned
Max burger.
Yeah, nobody mentions Max. Yeah. Max was great at the beginning doing the magic. He like give the kids advice and shit like that. Then he disappeared, and apparently he's on the new reboot of the show, which is pretty cool. He was probably the most entertaining side character, minor character.
True.
Or Ox. Ox was another one.
One. Okay, we're getting some now.
He said one of the. We're sensitive too.
I'll break your neck.
I'm surprised nobody mentioned the episode where Slater's sister shows up and then Slater's dressed as a chick with makeup and a dress, and she's in the car with Zach. Or he's in the car with Zach. I thought that was really funny, man.
That's a great one. Slater's sister is a great one. So many minor characters, so many great memories. Guys, final thoughts on Saved by the Bell.
Good show. I think it still holds up, and I think there's if you want to look past, if you just look past the little situations and moments where there's some things that you can't do in a show today. There's a lot of great messages. There's a lot of things to learn from, especially the drunk driving episode. I thought that was a good one that that got a good message across. It was a serious episode. Even the Christmas one with the homeless people, and don't be judging people and help people. And there was they even went into the disabled. There was that girl that
they called the hotline, the one in the wheelchair.
Yeah, the girl that meets Zach and Zach becomes friends with her, and so aside from the things that we talk about that we mentioned that you can't do, there's a lot of great messages, and I think the show is still a great show to this day, still funny, and I enjoy it.
I agree with it, man. Looking back and this whole week watching old episodes, it brought back a lot of funny memories and a lot of funny one-liners, and it's a great show. I could sit there, and I watched a lot of episodes today. I could sit there and watch it all day. I want to check out I haven't had a chance to see the new show because I don't have the Peacock Network or whatever it's on, but I want to see it because I could see that nostalgia, and it brought back all the old characters and like a new generation. It's one of my favorite shows, and it was really a great coming of age TV show for us. And it's one of my favorites growing up.
I think the big thing about this, because they tried many iterations of Saved by the Bell. When they did the first new class, they just copy pasted the characters, and it didn't work. And they had to recast within the season. But I don't think you could get the magic from anybody else. And they've all shown it. You've seen Mario Lopez, a very charismatic guy. Mark Paul Gosselaar seems like a very cool guy. All the actresses on the show. I know Dustin Diamond had his ups and downs, but everybody seemed very affable. Everybody seemed very talented. I think they all seem very appreciative of the time. And I think that's what made the show work. I think it's the chemistry between the characters, because of course the jokes aren't very good. The writing wasn't very good, but there were spots where the characters and the actors themselves made them work. They made the episodes work. They made the episodes memorable. And these are shows that I think we're going to continue rewatching for a long time. They're going to get more and more dated because every time Zach pulls out that cell phone, everybody just cracks up because it's so old, but I mean, he's great. And listen to that Zach to the Future podcast. He even shouts out Harlingen in one episode. So check it out. It's a great series. Listening to it, I know you guys are too, but that's our show. Listeners, we'd like to hear from you. What is your favorite Saved by the Bell episode? What episodes did we not mention? Most importantly, let us know what you think about our show. You may reach us at formidableopponents@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter at @FOpponents and also on Instagram at formidable_opponents. Well, before we leave, I want to give a shout out to Dina at Creative Little Pill for another great artwork on our cover for this week's episode. Join us next week as we talk about favorite Nirvana song. We're celebrating the 30-year anniversary of Nevermind next week. Our episode will come out later on during the week. We know we have the Labor Day holiday, so look out for that one at the end of next week. Favorite Nirvana song. For Bob and Joseph, this is Randall. Y'all take care.
Get out of my school, Ron.
Rod.